Coco Gauff just said something about Eala that the entire tennis world was not expecting. After retiring from their Indian Wells match and watching Eala take over the tournament, Gauff sat down in front of reporters and admitted something that most top players would never say out loud about a player ranked below them. Now that Coco Gauff herself has admitted that Eala is the best player at Indian Wells in these conditions, do you think Eala can go all the way and win this tournament? Or is the competition too steep from here? Drop your prediction in the comments right now. Let's get into exactly what happened and why. What Gauff said matters so much more than just a polite post-match comment.
And did Eala win this particular encounter? Look at that subscribe number. It's just gone over 7 times in the last few minutes. For those of you just tuning in, by the way, wondering what is happening between Eala and Coco Gauff, well, Eala has prevailed. She is through to play Linda Noskova in the next round. Did they play twice? Did they? Coco Gauff retired, by the way, with a right arm injury. But at the time, she was being blown off the court by Eala. Alex won 8 of their 10 games. She was up 6-2 2-love at the time of retirement.
Coco Gauff is the world number 4, 2-time Grand Slam champion, one of the most decorated active players on the WTA Tour. She has been at the top of women's tennis for years and has faced every kind of opponent in every kind of condition on every kind of stage that the sport has to offer. When someone like that sits down in front of reporters after a match and says another player is the best at a tournament, that is not a throwaway line. That is a genuine assessment from someone who has enough experience and enough competitive pride to know exactly what she is saying and why she is saying it.
Would you say that you were relying heavily on today coming in? What's the part of your game that you kept going back to?
Honestly, I had a similar match at French Open last year, so I brought that mindset today of just trying to, whenever you guys were cheering for Alex, I was pretending that it was my name, and I think that it, it helped me a lot. So if you can't beat them, you got to join them. So.
And what Gauff said about Eala after their Indian Wells match was exactly that. She talked about how the slow courts at Indian Wells suited Eala's style of play. She praised Eala's ability to adjust to the conditions quickly. She pointed out how difficult it was to hit winners on those courts, how the points were longer, how the physical demands were higher, and how Eala handled all of those challenges better than anyone else at the tournament. In Gauff's assessment, Eala was simply the best player in those specific conditions. And coming from Gauff, that is not a small thing to say. But before we get fully into Gauff's comments, let's put the actual match in proper context because the result alone was already one of the most striking things that happened at Indian Wells this year.
Chris, what was your reaction to the quotes that she put out?
Yeah, I was a bit stunned as well. Like Coco, I went and sit in the crowd. I got a ticket. It was the first time I'd had to scan a ticket to enter a tennis match in a long time.
You know, we have a suite here.
Yeah, but I
Chris.
didn't. I wanted to, I wanted to be a part of it. I wanted to be with the fans.
That's the difference between you and I. I was sweet life in it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I was scanning it in like everyone else. So I was super excited. Coco got off to a good start, but then you started to see her making this movement that made me think that something was wrong with her back. She was kind of doing a stretch with her left arm, left wrist, but I initially thought it was a back issue. She continued to try to fight through, caught the trainer at 5-2 in the first, and then a lot of worry started to echo around the stadium. You could sense that something was up. You got to give Alex a lot of credit, though, because it is never easy. We're going to talk about it later with Lerner Tien, but never easy to play an opponent who is injured. And the way that she was able to put her head down and only focus on her side of the court, I think was a very mature thing to do.
2 weeks before Indian Wells, these same 2 players met at the Dubai Tennis Championships. Gauff beat Eala 6-0, 6-2. That is a complete shutout. That is not a competitive match that went one way. That is a dominant, one-sided performance where Gauff controlled every single aspect of the game and Eala simply could not find a way in. The scoreline was harsh. The reality of the gap between them in that specific match was undeniable. And when the Indian Wells draw put them together again in the 3rd round, the expectation from most people following the tour was straightforward. Gauff wins again, probably by a similar margin, and Eala's tournament run ends there. Eala had different plans. From the very start of the Indian Wells match, something was clearly different, not just from Eala's side, where the intensity and aggression were visibly higher from the opening game, but also from Gauff's side, where the physical issue that would eventually force the retirement was already affecting her performance in ways that became increasingly obvious as the set went on. Gauff committed 7 double faults in the first set. Her first serve percentage dropped to 44%, a number that is simply unworkable at the top level of professional tennis. She called the trainer during the match for treatment on her left shoulder and arm. And through all of that, Eala kept pressing, kept attacking, and kept breaking Gauff's serve with a consistency that made the final 6-2 first set scoreline feel almost inevitable by the time it arrived. The second set started the same way. Eala held her own serve and broke Gauff in the opening game of the second set. At that point, the match was 6-2, 2-0 in Eala's favor and moving in one direction only. And then Gauff walked to the net and retired. She told Eala she was sorry. She said she hated having to do it. And afterward, in her press conference, she described the pain in her arm in a way that made it immediately clear the retirement was not a tactical decision or an attempt to avoid a bigger loss. It was a physical necessity. She said it felt like a firework going off inside her arm, that her whole arm felt like it was on fire, that the issue might be nerve-related. That kind of description does not leave room for interpretation. Gauff was genuinely in pain and made the only decision her body was allowing her to make. Now, the natural question that comes up whenever a top player retires from a match is how much credit the opponent deserves. And this is where Gauff's comments become so significant, because she answered that question directly, and she answered it generously. She said in her press conference that she felt bad about the retirement specifically because of how well Eala was playing. She said she didn't want to take anything away from the way Eala performed. She said she would have preferred to finish the match and lose 6-0 rather than retire, because the way Eala was playing, she was going to win regardless of how the match ended. That is a remarkable thing for a Grand Slam champion ranked 4th in the world to say about an opponent ranked 31st. There is no version of that statement that is not a complete and genuine endorsement of what Eala produced on that court. Gauff was not just being gracious, she was being honest. She watched Eala dismantle her from the other side of the net for 55 minutes and walked away with a clear assessment. This player was better than me today, and she said so. Then came the deeper comments about why Eala was better, and this is where the tactical specifics get interesting. Gauff talked about the slow conditions at Indian Wells. She explained that the courts at this particular tournament make it very hard to hit outright winners. Points are longer, the rallies are more physical, the game becomes more about movement, positioning, and the ability to sustain pressure over extended exchanges rather than the kind of explosive one-shot power that ends points quickly on faster surfaces. And in those conditions, Gauff said, Eala was simply the best player at the tournament. The specific things Gauff highlighted about Eala's game are worth examining because they reveal something important about why this particular player is so well suited to this particular tournament. She mentioned Eala's quickness, the ability to get to difficult balls and recover position quickly, which becomes critical when points are running long and every ball has to be tracked down. She mentioned Eala's cheeky shots, the unconventional angles and creative shot selection that creates problems for opponents who are prepared for a more predictable game. And she talked about how Eala's adjustment to the conditions was faster and more complete than anything she herself was able to produce on the day. Now let's talk about the broader recognition that Eala's performance at Indian Wells has generated. Because Gauff is not the only established player who has been openly admiring what Eala is doing. Former professional Sam Querrey made comments that got a lot of attention before and during the tournament. He predicted that Eala would become even bigger than Gauff and Aryna Sabalenka in terms of overall profile and impact on the sport. He compared the energy she generates around her matches to the kind of atmosphere that surrounded Carlos Alcaraz during his breakout runs on the men's tour. The sense that something special is happening every time this player walks onto a court, and that fans will go out of their way to be there when it does. The numbers back up that energy. Eala's very first match at Indian Wells generated over $5 million in ticket sales and set a new attendance record at the tournament. $5 million in ticket sales for a single match. That is not a number associated with a player who is still building a name outside her home country. That is a number associated with a genuine global draw, the kind of player whose matches become events rather than just games. And yet Eala is ranked 31st in the world and has not yet cracked the top 20. Which means the gap between her competitive profile and her ranking profile is enormous, and closing rapidly. Every result like this Indian Wells run accelerates that convergence. The ranking points from a deep run at a WTA 1000 event are significant and will push her further up the rankings with each round she advances. If the run continues all the way to the title, the ranking jump would be dramatic and would immediately establish her as a genuine fixture in the conversations about the best players in the world, rather than just an exciting young talent on the rise. Jessica Pegula has also spoken about Eala in terms that reflect just how seriously the established top players are taking her emergence. Pegula described the atmosphere around Eala's matches as unlike anything else on the tour right now. She talked about playing in front of crowds that are completely transformed by Eala's presence. The Filipino fan base, which has been following her to tournaments across the world and turning venues into something that feels more like home courts. creates an energy that Pegula said was genuinely something to experience even from the other side of the net. That kind of cross-cultural, cross-geographical fan base is exceptionally rare in tennis. The sport has had players with massive national followings before, but the Filipino support for Eala is something that travels. It shows up at tournaments in the Middle East, in the United States, in Europe. Wherever Eala plays, the flags come out and the crowd finds its voice in a way that changes the atmosphere of an entire tournament, not just a single match. Eala herself, in her post-match interview after the Indian Wells win, was characteristically balanced about the whole thing. She said clearly that she did not want to win the way the match ended. She expressed genuine concern for Gauff and made a point of checking on her at the net before doing anything else. But she also said it was still a really big moment for her, playing on Stadium 1 at Indian Wells against a great competitor, advancing to the round of 16, continuing a run that is already shaping up to be one of the most exciting stories of the tournament. She held both things at once, the genuine compassion for Gauff and the genuine pride in her own performance, and communicated both clearly and honestly. That combination of competitive excellence and human warmth is what makes Eala compelling beyond just the tennis. She wins important matches and then stands at a microphone and talks about her opponent with respect, and her mother with love, and her country with pride. She is 20 years old and operating on one of the biggest stages in her sport with the composure and the clarity of someone who has been doing this for decades. The round of 16 against Linda Noskova is next. Noskova is ranked 14th in the world, has power and experience, and got to this stage by winning a tough 3-set match. She is not going to be easy, but Eala goes into that match with the endorsement of the world number 4, the attendance record she just set at the tournament, and a game that Gauff herself has described as the best in the field for these conditions. Gauff finally admitted it. Eala is the best player at Indian Wells right now. And based on everything we have seen over the past week, it is very hard to argue. Coco Gauff called her the best player at Indian Wells. Sam Querrey said she'll be bigger than Gauff and Sabalenka. $5 million in ticket sales for one match, and she's still ranked 31st in the world. Eala is doing something special right now. If you're watching it happen, hit like and subscribe. This run is not done yet.